Late last Tuesday night, I was sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot, engine still warm, radio low enough that I could barely tell what song was playing. I'd gone in for three things: milk, eggs, bread. The kind of trip you don't even count as a trip. I remember standing in the aisle, reaching automatically for the same brand I always buy. Not because I love it, not because I compared labels, just because my hand knew where it was. Only when I glanced at the price did something pause in me for half a second. It was higher, not shocking, just higher. $1 here, maybe $2. I didn't put it back. I didn't think about it. I walked to the register like I always do. Sitting in the car afterward, receipt folded in my pocket, I realized I couldn't remember when I agreed to pay this version of normal. I didn't remember choosing it. It just showed up quietly while I was busy being tired. And that's what stuck with me. Not the price. The fact that it felt inevitable, like gravity, like this was simply what things cost now. And questioning it would have felt strange, almost rude. I sat there longer than I needed to, thinking about how many decisions in my life started exactly that way, without a moment that felt like a decision at all. I've noticed that normal is one of the most expensive words I use with money. Normal groceries, normal rent, normal nights out, normal subscriptions. I say it like it's neutral, like it doesn't carry any weight. But somewhere along the way, my version of normal kept inching forward, and I never stopped to ask if I wanted to follow. I remember earlier versions of my life where I earned less and complained more, but somehow felt lighter. Back then, certain things felt optional. Now they feel expected. I told myself that was growth, that this was what adulthood looked like. Everyone lives like this, right? That sentence did a lot of work for me. It protected me from having to look too closely. Because if everyone lives like this, then the discomfort must just be part of the deal. But lately, that explanation hasn't been sitting right. I keep noticing how often keeping up doesn't actually mean catching up to anything meaningful. It just means adjusting over and over to a pace I didn't set. And the strange part is how quiet it all is. No alarms, no red flags, just a slow tightening that only becomes obvious when you finally stop moving for a second and realize how hard you've been breathing the whole time. Somewhere along the way, small upgrades stopped feeling like choices and started feeling like defaults. Bigger drink, faster shipping, the version with one more feature that costs $5 extra. I used to pause on those screens. Now my finger just moves. $5 doesn't feel like money when it's framed as comfort. But one night, half out of boredom, I did the math. $5 extra, 3 times a week. Coffee here, delivery there, the nicer option because why not? That's about $15 a week, roughly $60 a month, around $780 a year. Saying it out loud felt different than seeing it line by line on a screen. It wasn't devastating. It was uncomfortable in a quieter way. I remembered how often I told myself those upgrades were rewards for being tired. The strange part was realizing how quickly rewards turn into requirements. Once something becomes baseline, removing it feels like loss, even if it never made you happier to begin with. That's the part I didn't want to look at first. Subscriptions were next, though I didn't mean to look there. They just stacked up over time. A free trial I forgot to cancel, another one I kept because I might use it later. I remember sitting on the couch one night, flipping between apps, feeling bored, and somehow also paying for entertainment I wasn't even enjoying. I added them up. $12, $9, $15, another $8. It landed around $85 a month. That number surprised me more than it should have. Over a year, that's just over $1,000. I told myself canceling was a hassle, that my time was more valuable than the money. Saying that now feels strange. It assumes my time is worth a lot, but my money isn't. I didn't cancel them all that night. I just sat there feeling that low-grade tension between convenience and cost, wondering how many decisions survive simply because undoing them feels annoying. Eating out crept in under the cover of other people. Lunch with coworkers. Dinner because everyone else was going. Drinks because it felt rude to leave early. I rarely thought of those as money decisions. They were social decisions. But 2 extra lunches a week at $18 each is $36. That's about $150 a month, nearly $1,900 a year. I never framed it that way. I framed it as being easygoing, flexible, a team player. What I didn't frame was how often I didn't even want the food. I wanted to stay in step, to not be the person who complicated things. Looking back, I can see how belonging quietly showed up on my credit card statement. Not dramatically, just consistently. Gas stations became these little checkpoints in my day. I'd stop for fuel and come out with a drink, maybe a snack. $6 here, $5 there. It felt harmless because it felt small. 4 times a week at $6 is $24. Around $100 a month. Over a year, that's $1,200. I remember laughing when I realized that. It sounded petty. The kind of thing people argue about online. But what stayed with me wasn't the number. It was how defensive I felt. How quickly I wanted to justify it. That reaction told me more than the math did. Credit cards weren't about buying things I couldn't afford. They were about smoothing things out, covering timing, making life feel even. Minimum payments became background noise. Like a hum you stop noticing after a while. I told myself I was managing it. But managing, I realized, just meant maintaining. Interest doesn't care if you're managing. It keeps moving. There's something quietly exhausting about staying even. You're not falling, but you're not standing either. Just leaning forward, always. Every move I made came with slightly higher rent. Not wildly higher. Just a bit. $300 more a month than the last place. That's $3,600 a year. I remember calling it an upgrade. More space. Better location. It felt like progress. But sometimes progress and pressure were the same outfit. I never asked if the upgrade solved anything real. I just accepted that this was the next step. Work clothes were another category I didn't question. Shirts that fit a certain way, shoes that looked the part. I told myself it was professional, necessary. I can't remember anyone ever commenting on them. What I do remember is how relieved I felt when I bought them and how quickly that relief faded. Paying to feel acceptable is expensive in ways that don't show up neatly on a spreadsheet. Delivery fees felt invisible for a long time. $8 here, $7 there. Twice a week turns into over $800 a year. The food was fine. The convenience was real. So was the exhaustion. That's what I was really paying for. Not food, not time, relief. Temporary relief. And temporary things have a habit of sticking around longer than you expect. There were social costs I never labeled as costs. Group trips, birthday dinners, splitting things evenly when my usage wasn't even. I rarely said no. I told myself it was temporary, that things would settle down later. Temporary is a flexible word. It stretches easily. Technology upgrades felt mandatory. Phones, headphones, laptops. The old ones worked, but worked started to feel embarrassing. Staying current became another way of staying in step. I didn't question it. I just noticed how quickly new turned into normal, and how little joy lived in that space. Fees became part of the scenery. Bank fees, service fees, processing fees. I stopped reacting to them. Familiarity dulled irritation. Over a year, they added up to hundreds. What surprised me wasn't the total. It was how little I cared until I saw it. Every raise I got was matched by a quiet lifestyle adjustment. A little more here, a little better there. Nothing ever felt easier for long. I assumed more money would fix that. It didn't. It just raised the volume of the same questions. Comparison played its part too. I only compared upward. Nicer apartments, better vacations, more flexible lives. I never compared stress levels, or sleep, or how tight their budgets might feel when no one was watching. I started thinking in paychecks instead of years. Can I afford this now? That question replaced longer ones. It kept me reactive, narrow, always answering the immediate thing. Looking back, I can hear the rationalizations clearly. I needed it. I earned it. It's not that much. Everyone does this. They sounded reasonable, convincing. They still do, which is what makes them dangerous. Staying in step felt safer than standing still. Falling behind felt scary, even though I never defined what behind meant. I was chasing something without a finish line. The tiredness crept in quietly, not panic, not crisis. Just a low-grade weight that came from constantly adjusting, constantly spending, constantly smoothing things over. It felt normal. That's what bothered me. I think about another ordinary night. Receipts folded in my pocket, lights low. Nothing dramatic happened, but plenty added up. The price of staying in step doesn't announce itself. It just waits. And sometimes, when everything goes quiet enough, you can finally hear it.